Hello and welcome to part 2 of Sanna Sky. My name's Scott Naismith and I'm a landscape painter. First of all, I'd just like to explain there's going to be no background music on this one, and I'm just going to do a little commentary on it. It's purely because I'm having some difficulty with YouTube not acknowledging that I'm using open source sounds, so I'm going to see if I've got any bother with this one. If you don't want me talking about this painting, just turn your volume off now. Okay, so far in part 1, Sanna Sky has got to the stage where it's completely covered in paint. I do like to work on all the painting at once and try and get it completely covered so that I'm working right the way around the canvas all at the same time. The initial ground was a very warm, very bright mix of oranges, reds and yellows, and that was actually acrylic based, so it's acrylic paint that's on the ground to begin with. What you'll find with working oils on top of acrylics is that the acrylic ground will allow the oils to run very smoothly on it. Not all the time is it a great way to work. Many people like the grip of the canvas and the gesso to really grip onto the oil paint, but sometimes when you want the oil paint to slide around the canvas, it's quite a nice technique to use the acrylic before the oil. You could create more of a tooth with the acrylic if you sand down that colour a little bit before you start painting on it in oil. This particular one is not sanded down, and the paint, once the medium is applied to the canvas, once the paint is applied to that, then it really slides about quite quickly, and you can get some fantastic effects with blending, etc. with that. Okay, the main thing I was going to talk about in this commentary with the video here is about colour. I have two videos out there about colour, one of them hue and saturation it's called, and the other one the truth behind the colour wheel, the truth about the colour wheel. And colour is of massive importance to my painting and the concepts of my painting, and what I wanted to stress here was the importance of a unified colour study. There's really, in this piece, three different methods by which I am attempting to unify colour. Now, the first way that I can achieve unity of colour is the fact that I've got a nice, even, simple base coat. It's basically orange. It sort of transitions from reds through oranges to yellow, but generally it's a fairly even coat of cadmium orange and cadmium yellow. What happens is the slightly more transparent paints and the gaps between some of the brush strokes will show up this ground in various areas of the painting, and that will be apparent right the way through the painting. Now, as long as the ground is fairly limited in its colour use, then a fairly flat colour, then you will achieve a unity through the painting. It will show through some of the paint in some areas. The next way that I'm unifying this colour is that on the palette, when I'm mixing paint, I'm not using too many tubes of paint. Now, in my studio I have fantastic amount of paints. I've got so many paints, but some people will ask me, what types of colours do you use? And it's very different from one painting to the next a lot of the time. But as you'll see from my colour mixing video, that I heavily use cyan, magenta and yellow, and that's purely because they are the primary colours and I can mix most colours from these three colours. If you don't believe me that cyan and magenta are in fact primary colours, you can watch my colour video, The Truth About the Colour Wheel. But generally what you want to do is limit the amount of colours that you're using. If you're using a primary red, don't use cadmium red. If you're using alizarin crimson, maybe don't use permanent rose. And you want to limit yourself to the options. If you're going to introduce a blue in the sea, and you have used one type of blue in the sky, say a cobalt blue in the sky, then attempt to mix your color of blue in the sea with the same color blue, or at least some of the same color blue that you have in the sky, so that your colors relate to one another when you're mixing them. Often what I'll do is work one hue at a time, and then that hue will shift by pulling that pile of paint with the palette knife and mixing it in to the next colour that I'm mixing, so that the colours kind of are related to one another because they have an element of that colour in it. If you're using a cadmium orange, then it's cadmium orange that you'll use to desaturate some of your blues, and then that will mean that the desaturated blues will be related to the cadmium oranges somewhere else in the painting. And the third and final way that I would be using to unify my colour in this piece and many other pieces is the technique of glazing. And you'll find videos of mine about glazing on my channel, and it will direct you through various techniques in the form of glazing. Now, what glazing does is it puts a semi-transparent layer, translucent layer on top of your painting, and you will be able to see the colours as an optical mix. So that if you glaze yellow, for example, on top of cyan, you will see that as a green. Now, if you apply a very light glaze over large areas of the painting, the colour will start to mix, and it acts exactly the same as your ground, except it's on the top and not beneath the painting, and it actually unifies the whole thing. You could put a complete wash of yellow right over your entire painting, and that would unify the colour. It would obviously make the colour very yellow at the end of the day, but the less yellow that you use, the less yellow it will be. If you think of it as your printer printing out a photograph, if your printer is lacking the yellow ink, it will appear a lot more purpley in colour. And if you top up your yellow ink cartridge, that will bring the yellow back to it. Now, you can assess your painting if you need to up the yellows, up the oranges. If you want to make the whole painting a little bit more warm, you can put a warm glaze right across it, and it will unify the whole painting to the same degree. Often you can just shift your glaze throughout the painting, so like the ground, it doesn't need to be one complete layer of a colour. You can shift the hues in the glaze across the painting according to where you want to have what specific colours. Okay, that's pretty much it for part 2. Please tune in for part 3, which will be along very soon. There you'll see the conclusion of this painting. Thanks everyone who's been subscribing. I think that's fantastic. I've got like 1,200 subscribers now, but if you haven't done so, please subscribe, and you can also find me on Twitter at Scott Naismith and Facebook. Thanks a lot.